Shabbat Shalom and welcome everyone. It's nice to have you with us here this evening. As people find their seats, I thought we would begin tonight with a nigun that I think I used last week. I know I used it online. It's a real easy one. And a nigun is just a melody. You don't have to worry about words. You can do yalla or whatever syllables you like. But the tune goes like this. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, ya 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 la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Good, people are catching on. On page 120, you'll find the blessings for the Shabbat candles that Sheila has graciously offered to light for us this evening.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotov betzibonu lahadlik nir shel Shabbat. Amen.
Yeshikach, thank you. So welcome again to you as well as to those who are joining us electronically out there in Zoom land. We're going to jump ahead for a little bit to page 142 as we begin with Shalom Aleichem. 142. Shalom Aleichem Malachei HaSharet Malachei Elyon Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Boachem l'shalom Malachei HaShalom Malachei Elyon Mi Melech Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Baruchuni l'shalom Malachei HaShalom Malachei Elyon Mi Melech Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Tzedchem l'shalom Malachei HaShalom Malachei Elyon HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now we back up to the beginning of Kabbalat Shabbat on page 130, where we find the Lechu Neranana, the first of these psalms that make up Kabbalat Shabbat. This evening I'm going to do the traditional davening tune for the first paragraph, and then we'll move on through some other psalms. Lechu neranena ladonai nari alitzur yishenu nikad mafana betodah Bizmirot nari alo nikad mafana betodah Bizmirot nari alo Ki el gadol Adonai Umelech Gadol al kol Elohim Asher biyado mekerei aretz v'to'afot harim lo Asher biyado mekerei aretz v'to'afot harim lo. 132. Let's do this English at the top of the page together, and then we'll conclude with the song Or Zarua at the last Hebrew paragraph on that same page. Sing to Adonai a new song. Sing to Adonai all the earth. Sing to Adonai, bless God's name. Proclaim God's victory day after day. Tell of God's glory among the nations, God's wondrous deeds among all peoples. For Adonai is great and much acclaimed. God is held in awe by all divine beings. All the gods of the peoples are mere idols, but Adonai made the heavens. Glory and majesty are before God. Strength and splendor are in God's temple. Let the heavens rejoice and the earth exult. Let the sea and all within it thunder. The fields and everything in them exult. Then shall all the trees of the forest shout for joy at the presence of Adonai, for God is coming to rule the earth. God will rule the world justly and its peoples in faithfulness. Or zaru ala tzadik ule yishrele simcha. Or zaru ala tzadik ule yishrele simcha. Simchu tzadikim ba'adonai ve'odu lezecher kodsho. Simchu ba'adonai la'adonai ve'odu lezecher kodsho. Page 136. Let's read together in English the bottom half of this page. A Psalm of David. Ascribe to Adonai, O divine beings. Ascribe to Adonai glory and strength. Ascribe to Adonai the glory of God's name. Bow down to Adonai, majestic in holiness. The voice of Adonai is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. Adonai over the mighty waters. The voice of Adonai is power. The voice of Adonai is majesty. The voice of Adonai breaks cedars. Adonai shatters the cedars of Lebanon. God makes Lebanon skip like a calf, Sirion like a young wild ox. We continue now with the Lecha Dodi prayer. Actually, 140 first, we'll do Tzadik Tamar, the indented Hebrew paragraph, the second one. And this is the tune that is for the Israeli dance tune, so hopefully you'll catch on. And one of these Friday nights when we have time, I'll teach you the dance as well. So the tune goes like this. Tzadik katamar yifrach, yifrach, tzadik katamar yifrach, tzadik katamar yifrach, yifrach, tzadik katamar yifrach, ki erez balavanon yizge, ki erez balavanon yizge, ki erez balavanon yizge, yizge. And that repeats. Ki erez balavanon yizge, ki erez balavanon yizge, ki erez balavanon yizge, yizge. Let's do that together one more time. Tzadik katamar yifrach, yifrach, tzadik katamar yifrach, tzadik katamar yifrach, yifrach, tzadik katamar yifrach. Ki erez balavanon yizge, ki erez balavanon yizge, ki erez balavanon yizge, yizge. Ki erez balavanon yizge, ki erez balavanon yizge, ki erez balavanon yizge, yizge. All right, that was from our psalm for Shabbat. 140 was that psalm. Now we did that psalm for Shabbat. We're going to back up to Lecha Dodi on 138. And this evening, just to throw you a curve and get you to practice your Hebrew, we're going to do all the even numbered verses. So we'll do 2, 4, 6, and 8. And then we'll rise together for the final verse facing a door as we traditionally do. And we'll use the traditional tune tonight. Hopefully it's one that you know and we'll sing along as well. Page 138. Lecha dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela, likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki hi mekor haberacha, merosh mikadem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machashava techila, Lecha dodi likrat kalam, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 4. Hitna ari me'afar kumim, livshi bigdei tifartech amim, al yad ben Yishai beit halachmim, Karva el nafshi ge'ala, lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 6, next page. Lo tevoshi velo tikalmim, matishtochachi umatehemi, Bach yechesu aniyei amim, v'nivneta ir al tila, lecha dodi likrat kalam, pnei Shabbat nekabela, yamin usmol tifrotzim, V'et Adonai taritzi al yad ish ben partzim v'nismecha v'nagila lecha dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela. Rise if you're able. Bohi b'shalom ateret b'alam gam b'simcha uv'tzohalam toch emunei am segulam boi chala lecha dodi likrat kalam Penei Shabbat nekabla. Maybe seated for a moment. I know many of you have heard me say this before, but repetition is a good way to learn, so I'll be repeating a number of things that you may have heard before. Hopefully it'll help it sink in more as well. First of all, I apologize for that last prayer. I didn't realize that they don't have transliteration for Lecha Dodi, so that might have made it hard for those of you who don't read Hebrew very well to be able to follow along with the verses that you may not be used to. I'll keep that in mind for future Friday nights. So if you turn now to page 144, you'll find a half Kaddish, and this half Kaddish marks the end of Kabbalat Shabbat and then transitions us to the evening service. So in a moment, we will rise to do the half Kaddish together, and then we'll continue with the Baruch Hu, the call to prayer. We'll remain standing through the other readings until we've finished the Shema, and then we'll be seated for the V'ahavta prayer and the following ones, okay? Any questions, you're allowed to interrupt with questions too, because that's part of learning, an important part of learning. We are now on 144, where the half Kaddish. Okay? Sorry? I don't know if it's word for word half.
I know we call it the Chatzi Kaddish.
Yes, that's what it's always called. I have never counted the words. So very quickly, the half Kaddish is just this part. The folk.
Reached this age, I've never asked that question.
No, we love questions. That's how we learn. And, you know, why do Jews love questions? The answer is, why not, right? We like to learn that way. So the stuff that comes after, there's 3 lines, Yehei Shlomo Rabbah, and the other ones that follow. That's the end of the full Kaddish, and we'll learn more about Kaddishes for those of you who are going to be signing up for the class that we'll talk about later. 144. Yitkahada v'yitkahada shemei Rabbah amen be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chaye derchol Beit Yisrael Bagala Uvizman kari v'imru amen Yehei shemei Rabbah mevorach li'olam li'ol me'omayam Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasem v'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shemei dekudsha berichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma V'imru amen. 146. Baruch hu et Adonai hamivorach. Baruch Adonai hamivorach le'olam va'em. Baruch Adonai hamivorach le'olam va'em. We continue just with the concluding blessing on 148, last 3 lines of the Hebrew. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed Baruch ata Adonai ha'ma'ariv ha'ravim. Amen. 150, let's read together the English. Everlasting love you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev amo Yisrael. Amen. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. 154. V'yavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha Hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, b'shivtecha b'veitecha, u'v'lechtecha v'derech, u'v'shochbecha, u'v'kumecha, u'kshartam li'ohot ahal yadecha, V'hayu totafot bein einecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha. You may be seated, but we continue. Leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim le'Elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem, Asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liyot lachem Elohim, ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. How many of you were able to sing along with that? Okay. Anybody who did, you were chanting Torah. You may not have realized it, but the tune for the V'ahavta prayer is the trope, the little musical notes that you say on the words there. And it's a skill that you can learn, and if you want to learn it, I'm happy to teach you, and then you can start reading Torah with us. And Gav is one of our very well-practiced Torah readers and often volunteers to do that. And we'd love to have more of you.
Often, if I can't keep track of where the word is, it's odd though, because the pitch of it is almost I intuitively know where it's going to go. Maybe it's just because I'm musically trained.
Maybe.
But it's easy to follow along at least pitch-wise.
Maybe you were a Torah reader in another life. All right, so on 158 now, this is the Micha Mocha prayer, and this is the prayer of transition. It was written, these are the words from the song that the Israelites sang after being saved from Pharaoh's forces, having crossed the Sea of Reeds and gotten back on dry land. They sang these words as they transitioned from slavery to freedom, and we went from being slaves to being a free people. We sing this song transitioning us from our monotheistic declaration that we just made with the Shema prayer and going into very soon the Amidah, the most important prayer that we have, which is our chance to pray for anything that we want to, as if we're having a private audience with God. So 158, please join me in Micha Mocha. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, Nora tehilot od sefelem. Malchutecha ra'u v'necha bokea yam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam ze'eli anu v'yamru Adonai yimloch le'olam va'em v'ne'emar kifada Adonai et Yaakov uga'alo miad chazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai Hamanal Yisrael. Amen. 160, let's read together the English at the bottom of the Hebrew long paragraph, and then I'll conclude the bracha at the bottom of the page. 160. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up our guardian to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. Amen. All right, so now we're on 164 with this sort of meditational prayer before we get to the Amidah, the Tefillah. And the Hebrew words, it's not a direct translation. I mean, it is, but there's an interpretive one that I'll share with you in a moment. We sing it once in Hebrew and then once in English. And the words are, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. But the word for my mouth is sifatai, which is really your lips. Your mouth is peh in Hebrew, and sfatayim are your lips. So the sfatai is my lips. And there's another phrase that we use in geography in Israel, and that is al sfat hayam, which literally means on the lips of the sea. So what is that talking about? It's where the water meets the land and the shoreline. So when we say, open up my lips, in some ways, perhaps we are saying, open up my borders. Let me get past those delineations between water and land, between this world and the ethereal world, different things like that as we go into the Amidah prayer, which, as I've said, is our chance to pray either the Hebrew prayers or the English prayers or whatever prayers are just on your heart. But as this private audience with God, you wouldn't just walk up to a king and ask for what you wanted to. You would show some deference, and so the tradition is to take 3 little steps backward for each of the first 3 words and 3 little steps forward for the last 3 words. And then we stand with our feet together for as much of the prayer as we're able to stand that way. And we bow at the beginning and we bow at the end. There's a couple other places when you do it traditionally that you bow, but we don't have to get into that tonight. Okay, questions before we go on with the Amidah? Page 164, rise if you are able physically or if not spiritually, as we continue with this important prayer. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Next page. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah El Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot Umevi Geula Livnei V'Neihem Leman Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Yezrat Sarah 168 Ata Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechaye HaKol Ata Rav LeHoshia Mashiv HaRuach Umorid Hagashem Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed Mechaye Hakol Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Berofech Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem emunato lishenei afar micha Adonai Mechaye Hakol. We continue silently now from here to the end of the prayers on page 180. You may be seated whenever you have finished. Page 180, the last Hebrew paragraph. Please join me. Oser shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imiru, amen. And while we are in this space of this closeness with God during the Amidah prayer, we turn to page 510 for the Mishiberach prayer for those who are ill. This week, the people on our list include Tony Lee, Hannah Levin, Valerie Horner, Rona Paquette, Jackie Farrell, Miriam Schneier, Avraham Leib, Louise Ziff, Morton Kaplan, Bonnie Levine, John Farrell, Lindsay Martin, Tamara Fishman, Martin Jean, Igor Kurgansky, Kevin Killip, Clara Lobach, Maya Klaz, Emmett McDonald, Sharon Schneier, Rebecca Chappis, Evgenia Davidok, Dina Fahy, Linda Stewart, Cheryl Nicole Wright, Colleen Halpern, Karen Devora, Bat Masodi Van Norman, Lori Curtis, Asher Israel, Ray Zoy, Terry McCastiker, Aliza Wright-Tammy, Gail Kaplan, Yosef Shimon, Gerald Freed, Solomon Smear, Lila Rice-Pullman, Elizabeth Enright, Sue Ann Frankel, Harry Indig, Larry Brodsky, Alana Trombley, Maury Kleinplatz, Mark Delaney, Michal Weinberg-Kessler, Sarah Chaya Bat-Malka, Kate Barber, and AJ Camarata. And we extend prayers to all those in Iran who are suffering from their repressive regime with continued beatings and killings there, as well as those who are suffering in the Middle East from any of the oppressions going on. Are there names people would like to add? There's some online. Lorraine K., thank you. Dr. Mike Benzak, Rabbi Yitzchak Cohn, David Byrne, and all those who are in need of healing. Together on 511, we sing the Mishiberach prayer. Mishiberach avoteinu Mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shleimah, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us sing, Amen. right, again, Shabbat Shalom and welcome everyone, and to those online as well. This Shabbat is the first Shabbat of the book of Exodus, the book of Shemot. In Hebrew, the word Shemot means names, but we know it's the Christian biblicists who named the books their Latin or English names, and they chose Exodus because it's the story that's most important. But this parsha starts with the names and is listing the names all over again of all the people who came, starting with Jacob and his whole family, 70 people altogether, down to Egypt. And right after that, it says, and a new Pharaoh arose who didn't know Joseph. Okay? Obviously, Joseph from the Genesis stories was very close with the Pharaoh, right? They were tight buddies. And Joseph managed them through first 7 years of plenty, rationing so that some could be stored, and then 7 years of famine. But one of the things that we don't generally focus on when we talk about the Joseph stories is the not so great stuff he did. Because when he was going into the 7 years of stored food for the 7 years of famine, at first people were paying for it, and then they ran out of money. And so he said, well, bring me all of your crops, or not crops, they didn't have crops, bring me all of your animals. And so they brought their animals and they got food. And when the animals ran out, they said, we don't have anything else. He said, well, give me all your land. And so they gave him their land so that they could survive this terrible famine. And so, in essence, what Joseph did was he enslaved the people of Egypt to Pharaoh because they had nothing left. There's a phrase in Judaism called midah keneged midah, which literally sort of means measure for measure. And it's basically the Jewish idea of karma. If something bad happens, or we do something bad, it gets corrected or punished later on by other generations. And so there are some scholars who believe that the enslavement of the Hebrews by the Egyptians was sort of the comeuppance for what Joseph did to the Egyptians with that selling of things to him and to Pharaoh for the famine. So we're there in Egypt in Shemot after this new Pharaoh is threatened. And it's interesting, the text in Shemot tells us that this new Pharaoh saw that the people were numerous, and so he was frightened and afraid that they would somehow or other take over or rebel or diminish his power. There's no evidence that any of that was true. So this Pharaoh was acting totally out of fear and enslaved the people. Now, I want you to think about this question. There's not a specific answer to it, and we're not going to answer it tonight, though we can talk about it at the Kiddush if you would like to. How do you think Pharaoh went about enslaving the Jewish people? Did it happen little bit by little bit? And they thought, this isn't so bad, we can live with this. And then it got worse, and then it got worse. Or did it happen all at once where he just said, okay, that's it. You guys are losing your freedom. We're taking over. You're going to be our slaves. We don't know. The text doesn't tell us. It's somewhat reminiscent of the old metaphor of the frog, where you put a frog in the boiling water and they're going to jump out. But you put them in a pot of cold water and turn on the heat not too high, but high enough that slowly it gets to boiling and the frog dies. One could use that argument to say that it was little by little. One of the things we should be thinking about as we study Torah is, how is it applicable to today? Right? We always want to figure out, how do we apply Torah to our lives? There are things going on, not just in neighbors to the south, but in countries around the world, where things are happening little by little that are pretty negative. And we don't know yet how it's going to turn out. And we don't know if there may be some people who feel the same way about Canada, that things are changing little by little. And we don't know how that's going to turn out. And so perhaps the lesson that we should take from this story is we have to be vigilant and watching for all those changes, and making decisions as to what we think is best for us and our families and our people, as well as the rest of our country. And that actually is what the Rambam talks about, is these sort of concentric circles that we should be concerned about our immediate family, and then about our Jewish family, and then about our countries, and then about the greater world. That's how we should prioritize the things that we worry about. So that's one important lesson. The second thing that I want to mention, because women don't get mentioned enough, and this is also in our Parsha, is when this Pharaoh finally felt that, these people are so numerous that we got to do something drastic. And so he orders, it says, the Hebrew midwives, and I want to point out very clearly that we don't know, the phrase is Hebrew midwives, and we don't know if that means that they were Hebrews who happened to be midwives and served the Hebrews, or if they were Egyptians or some other culture who were assigned to serve the Hebrews. We weren't really Jews yet because we haven't gotten the Torah. We were Hebrews or Israelites. And so their names, they are mentioned in the Torah. And we know, those of us who do a lot of Torah study know that when somebody gets a specific name, it's an indication that it's important. And these two women were named Shifra and Puah. And so Pharaoh commands them to check the birth stool of all the women that they serve, and if it's a male, kill the male. But if it's a female, they can let it go. And what do you think Shifra and Puah did? Resistance. They didn't capitulate in advance. They didn't do what they were told. And they made up a story. When Pharaoh complained, wait a second, I told you to slay the firstborn sons. Why aren't you doing it? They said, well, the Hebrew women are so strong that they've borne the children before we even get there. And so we couldn't do it. So then he commands all of the Egyptians to throw all the Hebrew males into the water and drown them. And that's when we get to the other story that people are mostly familiar with, how Moses' mother puts Moshe in a basket and floats him down the Nile and sends his older sister Miriam to watch the basket to make sure everything's okay and what happens. And lo and behold, who spots him but Pharaoh's own daughter, who takes him out, draws him from the water, and that's why she names him Moses. It's from a word that in her language meant drawing from the water. And Miriam, she hears and sees this and sees that the princess doesn't react badly, kind of jumps out of hiding and says, oh, would you like me to go get a nurse for her, a Hebrew nurse? And Pharaoh's daughter says, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. And so who does Miriam go to but her own mother? And so it's actually Moses' mother who gets to raise him during his early years. We don't know at what age she may have finished nursing him, but we know that he grows up as to an adult in Pharaoh's palace, right? That much we know. But we also know that he has a sense of his connection to the Hebrew people. Perhaps his mother taught him. Perhaps his older sister and his older brother, Aaron and Miriam, taught him things as he was growing up when he was younger. Because the last story that we read about of real significance is that as Moses is out there walking around, checking on things, because he grew up in the palace, he's up in the upper echelons of society, he spots one of the bondsmen beating Hebrew slaves. And he goes out to rescue this slave and ends up killing the Egyptian. The text tells us he looks left and right to make sure nobody's watching before he does it. And then the story, part of the same story, but the next part of the story is on a different day he's out and he sees two Hebrews fighting with one another. And so he runs out to break that up. And they say to him, who put you over us? Are you going to kill us like you killed the Egyptian? And so Moses goes, oi, people know about what I did. I better get out of here. And so he runs out into the desert, runs into Yitro's daughters, and we'll leave that for another week because that's a later part of the story. So it's interesting to revisit these, and as I said, what I think is important for us as Jews today is to study these stories and think about what are the lessons we can take from their experience, even though it's not the exact same situation. Maybe there are things that can get us thinking and get us deciding how we should be acting based on what we learn from their stories. Shabbat Shalom. So we're ready to return to our prayer books now for our closing prayers. We begin with the Aleinu, which is all the way back on 500 and, I can't even, thank you, 86. I can't even read my own writing. 586, we rise for Aleinu. We'll do the bottom one on that page, and then jump to 588. If you're able, please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula liyotzeh bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei aratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. 588. שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד ארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אינו אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת, אין עוד אינו. 591, middle of the page. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו echad. You may be seated. As Jews, we're a people of memory, and we always pause toward the end of each service to remember the generations that have come before us. And in this congregation for the coming week, we observe the yard sites, the annual passings of the following people: Maria Goldberg, Orville Marcotte, George Weingarten, David Duncan, Sidney Casper, Minnie Porvin, Martin Wunder, Beatrice Cherniak, Sally Goldhar, Ida Resnick, Heinrich Dinendahl, Pauline Fine, Dasha Lobach, Nancy Barrett, Jenny Rubin, Fanny Brodsky, Patrick Leithorn, Philip Schomburger, Nina Zlotnick, Rachel Azef, Irving Goldhar, and Lillian Scott. Are there other names people would like called that were not on my list, including perhaps out in Zoomland? No other names? First, is there anybody who is in either sitting Shiva or Shloshim period of mourning? Please rise. Do you want to share? Is this just a yard site? Okay, so that's coming next. The first is Shiva is 7 days and Shloshim is 30 days. Those are the actual mourning periods. And then these names that I read were yard sites. So all those who are observing a yard site, please rise. And we say to you, Hamakom Yinachem Etchem, B'toch Shar Avilei Tzion v'Yerushalayim, may God comfort you among all mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. And then anyone else who would like to rise from the mourner's Kaddish may do so now and turn to page 598, as together we recite. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, Amen. B'alma divra chiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh b'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei derchol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mavorach li'olam u'le'olmei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar, v'yitdaler, v'yithalal, shmei dekudsha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mroma. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. Please be seated. So we have a number of announcements this evening, and I guess I'm somewhat sorry that I'm responsible for a bunch of them. If you paid attention to your email blasts, I'm starting what I call the Shema and Shmooze sessions. Shema means listen, that part is for me. Shmooze means to chat, that part is for you to talk to me. And tell me your thoughts about the congregation, what you've liked in the past, what you'd like to see in the future, in these group sessions that were sent out in the email. The first one is this Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. here in the chapel at Bethel. There's others scheduled, and we do ask that you sign up in advance. There will be at least one board member at each of them as well to share their thoughts, but also to observe. Obviously, there's no cost for any of those sessions. And if you're unable to make them and you want to have an individual conversation with me, then just let me know, because your input is important, whether you do it in the group session or not. They are not intended to be like brainstorming. They're not judgmental at all. It's not a question of whose memory is better or more right or anything like that. It's for me to listen, not for you guys to argue about what things might have been like at any certain time. I also have a class that I'm calling Tradition and Change, His Story and Our Stories. And I'm doing this instead of an introduction to Judaism, because I don't want anyone to feel like they have to be on a beginner level only to come to this. This class is open to anyone, Jewish or not Jewish, who wants to learn more about Judaism at an adult level. It is for adults, and there'll be 2 10-week sessions. The first one starts Monday evening at 7 o'clock here at Bethel, and goes on with, we'll skip a couple when I'll be gone and for vacations and things like that. I will email a syllabus to anybody who wants one, and it's to... Okay, so, well, I think I have you, and I'll send it out right after Shabbat to the others who had contacted us before that are not on our email list, okay? Anyway, so that course is free to people who are members. Non-members, the charge is $180 per semester. And to sign up, all you have to do is email or call me. But I want your name, your contact information, and a little bit about your background, that you're a total novice, that you grew up Jewish and had some schooling but forgot it all, or that you've been a fervent student and just want to learn another, whatever it might be, doesn't matter, just helps me understand who the audience is. All right, there's a distillery tour and tasting on January 22nd from the Windsor Jewish Community Center. If you want to sign up for that, you may. You do have to register in advance. There is also a Jewish Heritage Night at the Detroit Pistons on Sunday, February 1st in the evening. There'll be a bus going from the JCC at 4 o'clock. They were sold out, but have found a few more tickets. So if you're interested, you really need to call the JCC this coming week because those are going to go fast, and that'll be it if you're not already signed up. The other thing is, as you may have noticed, not just tonight, but at other times, our Mishiberach list is pretty long there. And so we're asking all the people who put names on, they'll get a special email saying to please keep us updated as to whether or not we should keep the person on or not. And that's important to do fairly regularly, like once a month or so, if you're the one putting the name on. But we're also sending out a separate email to the entire congregation, letting them know that some things about how and why we do the Mishneh Berach list and how and when to put somebody on and when to take them off. So hopefully that'll be instructive and maybe shorten the list a little bit. Okay, I think that's it for the announcements, unless somebody else has anything that I'm not aware of. But the book club, did they have their meeting? Did they have one coming up?
Last Wednesday of the month. I don't know.
So it's coming up in,
Yeah, it's coming up.
yeah, okay. And that information should be,
It was in the e-class.
yeah. Okay, thank you. Great, so anybody who's interested, you can sign up for that. I think it said you could sign up even if you didn't read the book, but I don't remember. Okay. All right, so let's go to our closing hymn for this evening, page 626, a traditional Ein Keloheinu. 626. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadoneinu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Micheloheinu, Michadoneinu, Michemalkeinu, Michemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adoneinu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adoneinu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adoneinu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Okay, so we're going to do Kiddush and Motzi here. I know the Kiddush, the full Kiddush is in here somewhere, but I don't know the page. If someone, sorry? Thank you. 123. You can find the full Shabbat Kiddush. It is traditional to rise for this, if you're able. Vayer vayivoker yom hashishi. Vayechulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tzevham vayechal Elohim bayom hashvi melachto asher asa vayishbot bayom hashvi mikol melachto asher asa Vayevarech Elohim et Yom HaShvi'i Vayikadesh oto Ki vo shavat mikol melachto Ki vo shavat mikol melachto Asher bara Elohim Asher bara Elohim lasot Savrei, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Bore Pri Hagafen Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'yava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh bereshit, ki hu yom techilah, למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, קיבלנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת עם כל העמים, ושבת קודשך, באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו, ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. אמן. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem